Hello and welcome to the Formidable Over 40 podcast. I'm Sarah Pittendrigh, a mum, award-winning entrepreneur, cancer survivor, mentor and coach. In Series 2 of the podcast, we're sharing new stories along with the ethos that you are never too old and it's never too late to design a life you love. On this episode, I'm joined by author and travel journalist Kate Wickers. Kate's debut travel memoir, Shape of a Boy, was published in 2022 and was listed by National Geographic Traveller in the 9 best travel books of 2022. Her travel writing has also featured in the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the Scotsman, and many more. Kate's writing career has spanned over 2 decades and has taken her all over the globe, from swimming with penguins in the Galapagos to walking the Great Wall of China. I can't wait to hear all of Kate's experiences and stories on this episode of the Formidable Over 40 podcast. Before we dive in, please don't forget to rate and subscribe to the Formidable Over 40 podcast. It really helps me to share more fabulous stories like this. So, good morning, Kate. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you very much for inviting me on. Lovely.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here today. So, for the benefit of the listeners, I know I've done a little bit of an intro to you, Kate, but it would be wonderful if you could just share a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I live in Windsor and I'm in a house full of blokes. My husband, Neil, and then I've got 3 sons, Josh, who's 22, Ben, who's 21. There's only 15 months between them. What was I thinking? And Freddie, who's 17, and then little Bertie, our Westie pup. So yeah, even got a male dog. So I am queen bee in my house full of men. Like you said, I'm a travel writer, freelance journalist, and author. Author from as of last year. That was a lockdown for me. So new direction for me writing-wise, which is very exciting.
Yes, and to publish your own book and to actually see your words in print as in your own book rather than for somebody else must have been an incredibly proud moment for you, Kate.
Yeah, it really was. Like I said, it was a lockdown baby, and it came off the back of having everybody at home. Josh had been sent home from uni, Ben had his A-level cancelled, and Freddie was homeschooling. And as we often do as a family, we chat about our travels, and as we were chatting about them, I thought, do you know what? There might be a book here. And I got out all my old journals and started rereading them. And I thought, I could do something with this, I think.
Yes.
Because it's such a, writing memoir is such a personal thing. So it was a very proud moment. It was a proud moment for all of us. The boys have really embraced my journey as well. Thank goodness. It is a bit, I've broken every rule regarding what goes on tour stays on tour, Yes. But they all read it before it was published and gave it the thumbs up. I didn't want them to be embarrassed by anything or, oh mum, what have you written that for? So it's been a great journey as a family, really, actually.
Yeah, and we will get on to the book. I've started to read it. I'm in Toyland at the moment.
Oh,
I'll not give it away, but I'm in Toyland. I'm coming to the end of there, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I've been away quite a bit on business with International Women's Day and everything, so I haven't had the chance to get into it as much as I want to. But I can't wait because I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and it's so inspirational in terms of reading it and thinking, you can kind of feel that you're with you on this journey, and then it makes me think, I want to go there. I want to see that. Do you know what I mean? It really is fabulous, but I definitely want to talk more about that as we get through the interview. So the ethos of the Formidable Over 40 podcast is it's very much about just showing women who are in midlife, who might be feeling a little bit stuck, might be feeling at a crossroads, a little bit lost. For many decades, they've been as someone's, maybe they've the parents, partner, running a business or being, running a high-powered job for someone where they've never had the opportunity to to sort of just really consider who they are, because they've been high performing in all of those roles, if you like. And then as you get into midlife, and you get all these different shifts going on, it sometimes brings about at a crossroads. And what I'm doing with wonderful guests like you is sharing the stories of what it's taken to get to midlife, so that they realize that they're never too old and it's never too late to design the life you love. So if I was to ask you, what does Formidable Over 40 mean to you, Kate?
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because the word formidable, when I first saw the name of your podcast, I thought, gosh, I don't know if I'm formidable. I don't know whether that had a few sort of negative connotations to me. And I kind of I had to look the word up just to check that I had the kind of right definition, really. And it does actually say that it's someone who can inspire a little fear.
Yes.
And also respect. And anyway, I was chatting to one of my oldest friends last night on the phone, and I told her what I was doing today, and she's known me since I was 6. And I said to her, I don't know really if I fit into the formidable category. And she spat her wine out.
After reading your book, and I'll not go too far on, but I'll just say Bethlehem. And when I was reading about that bit, I think there's a lot of formidableness and bravery in that.
Yes. Well, it's quite interesting, because what she said to me is, she said, Kate, you're not formidable over 40. You've always been formidable, and I wouldn't have ever described myself as formidable, but it's interesting, isn't it, how other people see it. I think we're a mixture of a lot of things, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think what it means to me is that, I've raised my sons now. Freddie will be off to university next year.
Yes.
And the last 5 to 8 years, when the boys were very little, I never worked full time. I'd write for 3 afternoons a week when they were preschool children, and I never travelled a lot when they were young, because my husband's job that involved travel as well.
Yes.
One of us had to be at home, and I wanted that to be me as well. I made that choice. I mean, no judgment on any other women who choose, who make other decisions. But for me, I wanted to be at home. So I did sacrifice, although I never stopped writing completely, I did sacrifice my career a little bit during that time. So I feel now that, I just feel that I can do anything I want to, really. I feel that I've done that for them. And I think I've made quite a good job of them. Great. All credit, but they're great boys. But now I feel like it's my time again, and I feel like I'm ready to do a lot of exciting things.
Yes.
And I think I'm not as worried about trying things as I used to be when I was younger. If things don't work out, then we can reinvent ourselves all the time, can't we? That's the wonderful thing about now, the age we're living in. We don't have to be one thing. We can be a lot of different things. And I think I feel a bit braver to just give things a go.
It's a confidence thing, isn't it, Kate? I think it's a confidence thing that we pull up through the decades, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about you, but in my 20s, I was sort of a muddled up, jumbled up new mum, 28. I was married at 23, new mum at 28, trying to juggle, being the breadwinner and a new mum and da-di-da-di-da. And that does your confidence in, I think. And then your 30s is like all that, I think it is when you get to, like what you're saying there, really, you kind of get to your 40s, don't you? And certainly I'm in my 50s. You can't, I don't know whether it's that you think, hell, I've got more time possibly behind me than I've got in front of me. I've got to make it count, so I don't care anymore. Or whether it is just that, this confidence that we get, isn't it? As time goes on.
I think when you're bringing up a family, undoubtedly you do lose yourself a little. I felt like I lost a little bit of, myself. I gained another role, of course, and being, mum to Josh, Ben and Freddie was wonderful. I wouldn't have missed that for the world. But you do lose a little bit of what makes you, just about you. And it's nice to be getting some of that back now. I feel, that I've got a little bit more of that back. And I'm open to anything now. I'm open to all sorts of possibilities. So that's how I feel.
And would you say that you're wanting to push on further with your career now in your 40s? Or, it's like nearly having not a rebirth, but sort of a completely sort of step back, looking at the landscape and thinking, hey, I'm prepared to just see what it has in store for me.
Yeah, so I should just say, actually, I'm familiar with 50 now. So,
right,
I'm my 40s.
Yeah.
But yes, there's so much more I want to do. I think writing for me isn't something, it's not just a job, it's just a huge part of who I am. And I can't see that stopping anytime soon. I think it will go on and on. So in what form, I don't know. That's still evolving for me. But I definitely know there's a lot more I want to do.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. And I mean, it's like, especially how you've traveled and you've written, and I bet, with these journals that you've consolidated now into this wonderful book that we're going to talk about. I mean, it's an incredibly wonderful gift, I think, to be able to write. I've just written a book. Well, I co-wrote it with Eleanor Mills, and if she hadn't helped me by laying out the sort of how can we put it? She sort of put the structure out there for me to put the meat on the bones. I couldn't have done it. I just wouldn't have even known where to start. And I think to have that flair, it's just such a wonderful thing. My dream would be to be able to sit and write a book overlooking the sea. That's my dream, is to maybe write some form of book myself. And what the topic would be, I've got no idea at the moment, because I've just done my other one. But I mean, one from my heart to write at the sea must be wonderful. And that's why I say your book is totally, totally inspiring me. So we've sort of talked about being formidable over 40 and how through the decades shapes us. So if we go back to when Kate was 15 and we have a look at your life then, who was Kate? What were her dreams? What were her hobbies? What was she doing?
Yeah, so Kate at 15 was quite a feisty little madam. I'd like to think I've got a little bit of that back lately, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit of 15-year-old Kate creeping back into my life. What was I like? I spent a lot of time posing.
Right.
Smoking white consulate menthol cigarettes, walking around the small town that I lived in, just outside Bristol, in my Oxfam coat, my DMs, thinking I was the next best thing. My hobbies were, I've always loved reading. I did write at that time as well. I was big into drama. I thought I wanted to be an actress, actually. And the other, thing I loved to do was paint. I was doing an A-level art. I wanted to do an A-level art. So, that was another accessory of mine, along with the white consulate cigarette. I had a big art portfolio that I kept through. I mean, I was quite attention-seeking, I won't lie. I think if I could probably see myself now, I'd probably think, oh, get over yourself.
I don't know. I think you sound pretty cool to me. It's funny. I'm laughing to myself inside about those consulate menthol cigarettes. It was something I'd completely forgotten about. And yes, I was that girl too.
I shouldn't be, saying how cool I thought smoking was.
I'm the same.
But the other thing, while we're on the subject, the other cigarettes were those really long, thin, brown Moore cigarettes, which were...
gosh, yes.
I thought I was absolutely so cool.
Yes.
We all do it, smoking's not cool, don't we, Mum?
Well, it's totally not, and it's very, it's we all know now. I think that's the difference, isn't it? There's so much research and so many facts out there about how bad it is for us. So all the listeners, don't jump on the bandwagon here and say that we're promoting it. We're not. We're saying we understand that we were foolish, but we thought at the time we look cool.
15-year-old Kate. And the other thing I loved to do was, because, I was so close to Bristol, was going to see live bands and big into live music. And I would, go to gigs age 15, and then I would try and find out where people were staying, what hotels they were staying at. Oh my God, no stopping me. And, I'd go and stalk Jim Kerr from Simple Minds.
Yes.
Get autographs and so I was, I was quite a handful, I think, for my mum and dad.
It's all character building, isn't it? It's all personality to who we are today. So I want to talk about your book. Now, obviously, those people who are listening on Apple or Spotify aren't going to see this, but for anyone who's watching on YouTube, this is Shape of a Boy, and it is a wonderful. It's a wonderful journey. Actually, rather than me describe it, Kate, describe your book to the listeners, because it's your, as you say, your baby.
So the first chapter begins with me pregnant with Josh, traveling in Israel and Jordan, and then the book grows from there. So the next chapter, I've got Josh with me, and he's a baby. The next one, Ben's there as well, and they're 3 and 2. And it goes on throughout their life. So it begins with, the second chapter, Josh is a baby, and the last chapter, we're in Cuba, and Josh is 18, and that's where it ends. And every chapter deals with something that I feel that the boys have learned while travelling. So, a life lesson they've had. But there's a lot of humour in the book. Mm-hmm. And it's very honest. It's a real warts and all account of who we are as a family and how we travel together. And I wanted to write something honest, because I think there's a lot of, there's a lot out there about perfect families and, perfect lives. And I think, I wanted to show people that, as a mum, I make mistakes. My children aren't perfect. We have a lot of fun along the way, but, we argue and there are problems, and I don't always get things right. But it's I hope it gives people a little bit of inspiration as well to travel if they've got young kids, because it is doable. You can worry about these things and look at all the things that can go wrong. But at the end of the day, the things you think that might go wrong never do. And it's the things you didn't anticipate that, come up as problems. But, I've never had any terrible experiences while travelling. Touch wood.
Yes. And there's a bit that really resonated with me in the book. I was a single mum for 10 years with my son, William, who's 23 now. And I used to holiday with mum and dad. And I can remember traveling to Malaga, and he screamed from the moment we got on the plane to the moment we got off the plane. And everybody literally just was staring at me with devil eyes. I think I was the most hated person on that flight, and I could not, for the love of me, settle him down. And there's a bit in the book, was it when you were going to Thailand, where your son was
Thailand, the minute we got on the plane, Ben went rigid. He was 2, and it was a night flight, long haul. I had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and Ben was screaming his head off, and I was getting so stressed. Yeah. And the more stressed I was getting, as any parent knows, the more stress your child gets. And, it was just going from bad to worse. And what was stressing me out was that I could hear everybody tutting around me and see people rolling their eyes. I heard the woman behind us ask to be moved, And so I stood up and said to everybody, could I just have your attention for a moment, please? And everybody looked terrified then, actually. So maybe I am visible. Sort of like looked at me and thought, oh my God, what's this woman going to do? Crazy woman going to do? And I said, look, I know you think my son is a nightmare. And you're all dreading this flight with me for 11 hours. But can you just bear with me for a moment and just be patient? I promise you that I will settle him down. Hopefully he will go to sleep and then we'll more relax. But, I know I'm making you all uncomfortable and I'm getting very stressed. So, and it was really funny because a few people just sort of nodded, and this young people who were going off on this amazing backpacking adventure together just gave me a thumbs up, And, a few people were a bit like, oh my God, no, just shut your kid up, still. But anyway, no, people did sort of settle down, and so did Ben. And Ben fell asleep during takeoff and didn't wake up until we were landing.
Amazing.
And afterwards, people were saying to me, oh, we didn't believe you. We thought, we were going to be in for a nightmare trip. But, it was fantastic. I have, equally, I've been on, other shorter flights where it's been more difficult to, settle the kids down. I think most people have been there. I think, what you're imagining often other people thinking and saying about you and how much bother you're causing other people is a bit in your head, Now I think I'd be much more relaxed. When I'm on a plane now and I hear a child crying, I feel sorry for the parents.
Oh, well, that's it.
Rolling my eyes and tutting. I'm just thinking, oh, that's
the feel for you. It's not easy at all. So for anyone listening, what would you say in terms of any sort of travel tips and travel advice, for people? What lessons have you learned while you've been traveling?
Well, the actual journeying, the actual getting there. I think the whole sort of getting there and just, how to plan and prepare to have a good trip. Yeah, I think, the actual sort of physical travelling of getting on the plane and getting there, I think, there's a few things you can do. When your kids are really young, and they haven't been on a plane, I think it's really good to talk to them about what's happening. Kids often freak out because of something that's unknown. So getting to an airport and getting on a plane can be quite overwhelming for kids sometimes. So it's good to sort of show them pictures and chat about that first. I always try and pick, if it's long haul, when the boys were little, I'd always try and pick an evening flight, although not a very late flight, so that they were kind of completely overwrought. So a sort of early evening so that they could, watch a few cartoons and then settle down. And I always took their pajamas with me. They would always have, even on planes, would have a nighttime routine of getting in their pajamas, doing their tea, snuggling up under blankets that we brought from home and a teddy from home, so that there was a little bit of coziness, a little bit of familiarity. And when they were from about the age of 3, I'd always get them to carry their own little backpack, because tiny little backpack, like Joshua had one that had Noddy on it, and he'd have his teddy in there, he'd have a book, he'd have some crayons, crayons actually. I gave up buying individual crayons. I got one of those really chunky ones that you can change the colour on, because there's nothing worse than trying to find stray crayons that are rolled up people's seats. But you need to have a few little exciting new things for the kids to look at when they're on a plane. I think also just don't sweat the kind of stuff you have no control over. So if it's delayed, or if the weather's bad or something like that happens, just accept it straight away. You can't do anything about that. I never really understand when I see people at airports shouting about the fact it's snowing and their flight can't take off. There's nothing you can do about it. They're not going to suddenly say, oh, well, sorry.
Because you're shouting, we're going to be able to take off on time.
It's not going to happen. So when things like that, just you have to just go with it a bit, I think. And I think sometimes, people don't sort of just roll with those kind of things. And it's usually things that, like I said before, it's usually things that you've never anticipated, you've never thought of before that will come up as problems, but you'll deal with them.
And to be honest, Kate, you could put that to anything in life, couldn't you, really?
Absolutely.
You can apply that to so much, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
No, don't. Definitely not. It's a waste of energy. And again, your kids will just pick up on your stress and unhappiness. So, I mean, that said, I'm not perfect in every situation. I do get stressed sometimes and I do get frustrated, but I do try and let as much as I can just go. Over me.
Again, I think now in our 40s and 50s, I do think that's a lot easier to do than when we're sort of in our 20s and 30s. Would you agree? Or were you quite calm? And I mean, obviously you did that when your kids were small, but I think I would probably be. I probably wasn't as confident and as calm as you were when you stood up there and said to those people. I was more like, oh my God, I want to hide.
Probably I've always tried to be like that. I mean, I always think about where we're going. I always think about the destination. So even when things go wrong and you're in a moment where everything feels chaotic and, you think, oh my God, what am I doing taking 3 young children to Borneo or Sri Lanka or wherever? Then I just go in my mind to the destination and I think about everything that will be there when we get there.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, this is going to be amazing when we get there. Just get through this. This will pass.
Get to there. Just get to that end. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've been to some amazing places. I haven't, as I say, I've still got so much more of the book to enjoy. But where would you say has been the most favourite place you've been to, and why? Have you got a favourite?
I find that so difficult. Everybody asks me this question, and I should be answering this now, Sarah, but I'm really not. So I will say I've just got back from Rwanda and Uganda, and Fred was with me on that trip. And we went mountain gorilla trekking.
Oh,
and
wow.
I have, I've had some amazing travel experiences, during my career, but that was really up there. That was incredible. You go in small groups, maximum of 8 tourists to, visit mountain gorillas in the wild. In Rwanda, we were in National Volcanoes Park. And you go with a ranger and a guard and trackers. You spend, once you find the gorillas, once the trackers have found the gorillas, you spend up to an hour with them, maximum of an hour. And then the other 23 hours of the day, they're left, for their own, they're not disturbed. And they're habituated, which means that, they're used to seeing people. They're used to seeing people over the years. It's amazing tourism, and it's, really ethical. It was amazing spending time with the gorillas. We share 98% of the same DNA, and they look at you like they're thinking, oh, yes, you, I know you. They really, really look into your eye and make a connection. And I found it very moving. A little unnerving because the past you. But I never felt that, at any point that things could get out of control. It feels very safe. You're supposed to stay 7 to 10 meters away from the gorillas, but the gorillas actually don't take any notice of that. They
know no boundaries.
They don't. I mean, if they want to come and walk right past you, then they will. It was an exceptional, very privilege, absolute privilege. It was wonderful to share it with Freddie. It was just a wonderful experience. Apart from that, I think I've been so many trips for so many different reasons. I think Borneo is a very special one because that was wasn't the first holiday we'd had as a family of 5, but it was the first long haul adventure we'd had. And it was the day after Freddie's 2nd birthday that we got on a plane to Borneo. And I'd had very bad postnatal depression after Freddie was born. And it felt like it felt wonderful 2 years after, to be, I couldn't have imagined that again.
No.
During my bleakest moments, I couldn't imagine ever traveling like that again.
Yes.
It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Yeah. And we saw an orangutan in the wild, which is sadly very rare these days. And I talk about that in the book. Yeah. So that's a trip that really sticks in my mind. Another is before children. When I was just starting to think about a career as a travel writer, so I was still in my 20s. I went to Peru.
Yeah.
And I trekked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu over 5 days. And it was, quite challenging. You go up to some dizzying heights and camping above the clouds. It was amazing. And when I got back, the week after I got back, I saw that the rough guides were asking for submissions for a new guidebook. And the guidebook was called Women Travel. And they were looking for women writers to submit whole chapters, a whole story on a destination. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to write about Peru. Yeah. And I wrote about that trek. And they accepted it, and it was included in the book. And it was that moment where I thought, this is it.
This is what I want to do.
A writer.
Yeah.
And I didn't look back after that. It was such an honour it'll be 25 years next year that was published.
Yes.
I still think of it as one of my proudest moments. And it was right at the start of my career. And I still think of it as one of my proudest moments as a writer.
Yeah.
Included in that book with all these amazing other women writers, especially with rough guides. I've always been a huge fan of rough guide books. So Peru will always have a special place in my heart because of that. But so many lovely trips. Yeah,
they sound absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's something I definitely want to do. I think now I'm 52 this year, but prior to that, we've very much been on the road with horses. Our son went, competing all over the country at a high level, and so we literally lived on the road but let's call it a big camper van with horses on the back. And that's all we did was travel the UK all the time. So I haven't really been anywhere, which is why your book inspires me, regular trips every year to Malaga to go up into the mountains of Rwanda, which I love to be there. But I haven't really been anywhere else. Now, Italy inspires me. Now, did I see you write an article recently for the Telegraph? Now, it wasn't, because I wanted to go to Tuscany, and you were saying, I'm sure it was, I read this, tell me if I'm wrong, that there was somewhere new, not new, of course, not somewhere bloody new. It's the next, it's sort of been... How can I put it? The new Tuscany or something like that. I can't remember what you were saying, but it really interests me because it's somewhere I'd like to go. Please tell me about that. Where's that?
Well, actually, it's interesting because I'm writing a lot more about Italy at the moment. I've had about 6 features published in the last month on different things. I had quite an extended trip last autumn, and you're talking about Piedmont. So I had a huge spread in the Telegraph a few weeks ago, and that was on Piedmont's hilltop towns.
Yeah.
And in the Lager region. So that's the Lager wine region.
Yeah.
And it is comparable to Tuscany because of the architecture and the hilltop towns. Mm-hmm. But what's different about it is often you visit these towns and you're the only tourist there.
Yeah.
So they're very, very quiet. It's a beautiful region, not overrun with tourists at all. Most people go there for the food and the wine, which of course you would, a wonderful part of a trip there. But, also exploring the hilltop towns. We did a fantastic day by Vespa. Just going.
Oh, fantastic. That'd be such fun.
That made me feel 15 again.
I'd like that.
But exploring these places was lovely because, no one there. Absolutely no one.
Perfect.
Huge contrast to other parts of Italy.
Yes.
I've just, Italian magazine is just out, and I've got a piece on truffle hunting. I went with a female truffle hunter.
Yeah.
And a beautiful legato dog. Truffle Hunting in the Woods in Piedmont.
Fabulous.
And then Journey magazine, which is another absolutely gorgeous magazine. The new issue has just come out.
Yeah.
I've written a lovely feature on Puglia.
Right.
A slow travel feature on Puglia.
Yeah.
Which I love writing for magazines like that. They give you the opportunity to be really, really descriptive and write beautiful pieces. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying writing more about Italy again. I used to, and I think it's something I'm going to continue to do again. I think that's something definitely, I'd forgotten how much I love writing about Italian culture and food.
Yeah. Well, I've never been, as I say, we've gone to Spain for many, many years and enjoy being up, in the mountains, no tourists where we go. And we stayed at a very small boutique hotel, 20 rooms next to a mountain stream, no TVs or anything, just beautiful. But I want to get out now. It was handy when you just wanted to nip somewhere and you knew the food would be good and you'd get the sunshine, then you had to get back and do that. Whereas now I really want to carve out time for me and start exploring. And this is why your book's been so inspiring, because I think, God, there's a big world out there, Sarah. You really need to get a grip. And there's two wonderful ladies up here in the Northeast who've created 101 things to do. So it's a bit like creating this bucket list before you die. So I had to write a list of 101 things I wanted to do before I died. And I was just reading it back this morning and I was looking at how interestingly, how many of those things I put on did relate to travel. And one of them was driving through Italy in an E-Type Jag. Why I want to do that, I've got no idea, but it just sounds so, I don't know, is indulgent the right word? I don't know what, just fun. And so that was one thing. And I'm very drawn to Italy at the minute, and France. I did A-level French. God knows how I managed to scrape through that. But I think that is the sort of the plan, to drive through the gourmet trails of Europe. And I might just have to give you a ring on that one. So if you hadn't done travel, Kate, what would you have done, do you think, if you hadn't gone down the travel and journalism route?
When I was younger, I wanted to be an actress. So I was in all the school plays and, fancied myself as a bit of a thespian. Yeah. I did audition for drama schools. I got a place at Cardiff School of Speech and Drama. I think that's what it's called. Which I believe now is kind of like, has more kudos than even RADA. I think it's the top in the country. But I was a little young. And so they asked me to come back in a year. And by that time, I'd sort of moved on. I was a bit like that at that age. If things didn't happen for me straight away, I got bored and moved on easily. And by that time, I'd moved to London. And I had several. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. It wasn't like I was always really, really good at, English at school. Yeah. I didn't feel that the careers advisors there were particularly aspirational for us girls.
That's very true.
One of them suggested I might like to be a librarian.
Oh, well, that kind of trumps mine, because again, this must be a real generational thing. So anyone listening, I'm sure you're going to empathise with what Kate and I are saying. I had exactly the same thing. I was told, hey, there's nothing wrong with being a secretary, a librarian or anything. It's absolutely, everybody, does what they do. But I was told the best I could hope for was to be a secretary. And I didn't want to be a secretary, just like maybe you didn't want to be a librarian. But that limiting, there's a self-limiting belief before you've even bloody left school.
Yeah. I actually think being a librarian is probably a really lovely job.
Yes.
But at the time, it wasn't, I felt that, I didn't mind it being on the list, but I would have liked to have seen journalist, and journalist wasn't on. And I look back and I think, why wasn't it on there? Why didn't someone say to me, actually, Kate, you could possibly make a career out of writing. So what happened is I'd moved to London and I did several jobs. I worked as a window dresser for a little while. I blagged my way into that one off the back of having an A-level art and looking a bit arty, I suppose. And then I moved to Brighton, and I decided that I'd been working for Brighton Council, a part-time job, working on their play schemes, and I'd really enjoyed it. So by now I'm still only like 20, and I decided that I would go to university, and I would do a B.Ed in early years education. And I did that for a year, and then realised actually the teaching wasn't for me. So I left, and I got a job working for children in need as a project manager and fundraiser. So I've done quite a long route working for that charity. One of the projects I set up was a club for teenage girls on a large council estate just outside Brighton. And one of the things I started with them was a community magazine, like a girls' magazine. And it was so much fun. I loved it. I loved the editing process. I loved the, kind of looking for ideas. Yeah. And off the back of that, I started writing a few pieces for local magazines and newspapers. And I started thinking then that perhaps this could be more than a hobby. This could be something, I could do. And then I went back to university and I studied media and communications. And I did that over journalism because I knew that I'd be able to study journalism within that, but I'd also study other writing disciplines. And I wasn't still completely sure what I wanted to do with my writing. It's fantastic. Yeah. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But the key thing for me was I met another formidable woman. And she really was. She was an American professor who taught some of my courses. And she took me aside one day and she said, Kate, your writing is good enough to be published now. Don't wait until you've graduated. Write about something you love and start sending some stuff away. And I love travel, and I would take any opportunity to travel. Yeah. And so I wrote some travel features, and I wrote them on spec, and I sent them off to editors. And by the time I graduated, I was writing regularly for the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, wow.
And so I never really looked back after that. I was stuck with travel. And in the early years of my career, I covered a lot of adventure travel. I had a lot of flea bites back then. I'd be staying in hostels, trekking Tiger-Leaping Gorge in China and staying in like little mountain hostels and, really rough, but writing really interesting pieces. That was a really exciting, start to my career. And it was, it was all going very, very well, really, really well. And then, of course, I had kids. And I made that decision. I couldn't be on a plane every 2 minutes and away from home. And having a nanny was never really a consideration for me. Not again because I have any judgment on that. I think every woman should be allowed to make their own decisions about what they want and how they want to manage their family life. But for me, I felt that I wanted to be at home with the boys. And gosh, it was hard at times with the three of them. I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old and a baby at one point. And I used to look at the clock and it would seem like, I'd think I'd get the Play-Doh out for them to play and I'd think, oh, well, that'll take up half an hour. And I'd look at the clock again and 5 minutes had passed and they were already bored. The days were long sometimes.
Very long, I'm sure. Goodness gracious. I mean, 5... Goodness, 3 under 5. And
then postnatal depression when Freddie was born as well. So it was, there were some tough times. But I don't regret any of that. And so, but travel writing was something I fell into, I suppose, because Heather, my professor, pushed me into just going for something. Yeah. And, and then I just stayed with it. And then, of course, while the boys were young, I wrote about family holidays. So I'd save all the long haul stuff for when we could travel as a family.
Yeah.
And, that gave me lots to write about. Family travel became my thing more than adventure travel, although a little bit of that as well still.
And there's a lesson then there, or a message rather than a lesson, isn't there? That, you know, if you're passionate about something and you enjoy writing about it, to journal and put it all down in your journals, isn't there? Because look what your journals have brought out a book, and I suppose really my memoir is really, you know, my diary, my journal over the decades too. So I suppose there's a huge amount to be said for getting your journal and your pen and jot your notes down, isn't there?
I keep a notebook with me everywhere I go. So I'm quite old school. I like writing things down. So I'm a little bit of a magpie. If I'm on the train and I hear a snippet of interesting conversation, or, you know, I can just see something that will trigger an idea, I write things down. I'd be absolutely lost without my journals. I wouldn't have this book without my journals. I mean, you can look at, you know, photographs and those will stir memories, but really it's the fact that I kept such detailed diaries
words,
you know, that's helped me write this book. Yeah,
because you've got the words and the feelings from that moment, haven't you? And you because you've actually captured them in that moment, whereas they can be lost in translation from a photograph from years on, can't they?
Yeah, and the other thing I did in my when I was still in my 40s, I went back to university and studied for an MA. So
right.
Even though, you know, by then I had a career in journalism, I went back and I studied for an MA in creative writing. And I would really, you know, I often get messages from people who say, Kate, I'm really interested in breaking into travel writing. What would you recommend? Or is there somebody I can contact? And what I always say is, it doesn't really matter who you are or what, you know, if you write well, great. Go and study something, because, you know, even if you've got a career that involves writing, you know, you can always learn.
Yes.
And the MA I studied for really helped my feature writing. You know, it's not that I'm writing fiction. Where I've been to, everywhere I've been to and I've experienced, but description-wise, it just wakes your writing up. It gives you energy, you know, and I think going back to study at any age is a really positive thing. I mean, I you know, it was really good for me. It really woke me up. I felt it just improved all aspects of my writing.
And you're never too old, because my son's 23 and he was considering going, instead of doing his horses professionally, doing them as a hobby and doing something else. And I said to him, why don't you go to university? You know, go and study something completely different, do something crazy. Oh, I'm 23, I'm far too old. And I'm like, what? Gosh, you're not. And I'm trying to explain to him that you're not. I said, there's women who come to me, you know, for mentoring, and they're going to university, they're changing career in their 40s and in their 50s. You know, you're never too old. And I think that is the message, isn't it? That you must never sort of put yourself in that box of, I'm too old, I can't do that. You can do what the hell you like, can't you?
I think even in your 60s, you know, I've got some friends now who are getting to that age.
Yeah.
And are still really vibrant women and have actually, you know, now over 60 as well. I know a few who are really, really flying in their careers, and, you know, over 60. Why? I think we're living longer. You know, we're all, touch wood, healthier.
Yes.
You know, there's no reason, if you're excited about something and you're engaged, and, you know, why should there be a cut-off? I mean, it does annoy me a little bit, though, still, the whole age thing, particularly with women, because I was approached recently, I can't say by who, because it's hush, but I was approached recently by a television company about some presenting work.
Right.
And they thought I was in my 40s. You know, they didn't know how old I was, but they thought I was in my 40s. And when I told them that, you know, I'm now over 50, I could see them a little bit. And the reason why is because the other co-presenter is a younger male.
Right.
And I actually think that would have been quite an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
But for them, they wanted a similar age to the male host that they are talking to. And I just felt shut down.
Yeah.
So it still happens, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it most definitely still happens. There's absolutely no question about that. But I do think that the narrative is starting to change. I think midlife women now are realizing that, hey, do you know what? Actually, we've had enough of this. We've had enough of this. We're going to stand tall and proud. And there's some really wonderful people out there banging the midlife drum to encourage people to come on, get up and get out of the shadows. This is your time to shine. And this is, again, the ethos of this podcast. That's the whole idea. I mean, I reinvented my whole life in my 40s. I was a bankrupt single mum. I was on income support and my house was repossessed just before I was 40. And I rebuilt my whole life and totally changed the trajectory of my life in my 40s. You're stronger than ever, Kate. Stronger than ever in my 50s. I had cancer twice in my 40s. And it was like, I'm not going to just give in. I'm not going to give in. I've got a whole life to live. And now I'm more determined than ever and more passionate than ever about living. And sadly, we are coming towards the end of this interview, which I have so enjoyed. God, I could talk to you forever, Kate. I always ask my guests if they could pay forward some advice, for anyone who's sat there thinking, oh, God, I'm just stuck. I need to reinvent my life. I feel bloody stuck and I don't know which way to go. What advice would you share, could you offer to anyone who may feel like this, Kate?
Well, I'd say a few things. I think, I'm no expert. I'm just an ordinary mum. I do feel, at the end of the day, I'm just an ordinary mum. I happen to write about travel. And I happen to get my work published, but I'm just like everybody else, as you are, as anybody is. I think, often you look at people and you put people up on, these pedestals you think you can't reach, but you can. You can. You're no different to anybody else. And I think, we all have huge self-doubts. Everybody, even the most confident, formidable women. Have battle with self-doubt, including me. What I would say about that is my advice would be not to look at your end goal and fixate on that. I take small steps. So a good example for me is I've written a novel. So now, if I sat down and said to myself, right, Kate, you're going to write a novel, that would have been terrifying. It would have terrified me. It would have been too big a thing for me it would have stopped me starting.
Yes.
So I didn't do that.
Too overwhelming.
Far too overwhelming. And so what I try to do to reach bigger goals is it's small steps. So that might be 1,000 words. Okay, today I'm going to write 1,000 words. I'm not writing a novel. I'm writing 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to write another 1,000 words. And then in a little while I've got a chapter. Oh, look, I've written a chapter.
Yes.
Then I've written 2 chapters. And then it's, I think sometimes we set ourselves up for these major, I want to do this.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. And it's huge. And it's so huge, it stops you doing things. It stops you getting there.
Yeah.
Making things more manageable for yourself and realistic. We're all so busy, aren't we? That's the other thing. How can we possibly fit these amazing things we want to achieve into our lives? Well, I kind of fool myself into thinking I'm doing something much smaller to get to the bigger stuff.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. That is the whole ethos behind the I Can method. It's about looking at your big goal, pin it, put it on your wall in front of your desk, but leave it there and break it down into as many. I always say it's a bit like a chocolate orange. You've got the chocolate orange there, but then you break it into all these little segments and start putting it back together again, or think of it as a jigsaw. You've got the picture, and then it has to be broken up into so many pieces, and then eventually you just put it back together again, and then there's your big picture. Because you're absolutely right. It can just be too overwhelming, can't it?
It can be, and I think then that stops you getting even started, because you think, oh my God, it's too big. How can I even do this? I've got a big pin board that I have in front of my desk, and I write myself little motivational, post-it.
Yeah.
You can do it, Kate. You can do it.
You can do it. You definitely can.
Sometimes I think I can't. Quite often I think, I can't.
We're all like that. I think we all have those days, don't we?
Yeah. So, I think that's what works for me. And I think, I think just knowing as well that, I think it's taken me a long time to realise that everybody has self-doubt.
Yes.
Even the most confident appearing person, has times when they think, I'm not sure I'm up to this.
Yeah.
That sort of feeling, imposter syndrome.
I think that's more common than not. And I think, I think it's more common than not. And the people can feel very isolated, as if it's just them. Yeah. And that's why these conversations are so important, because for people to realise it's not just them makes a massive, massive difference. I remember when I was very, very depressed and suffering from agoraphobia and panic attacks, and I thought it was just me and there was something just wrong with me. Mm. But when I started to read about other people and they, they were describing how I was feeling, even not that you want them to feel how you're feeling, but just knowing that somebody else has been like that and gets out the other side makes a huge, huge difference, doesn't it? So I think it's so important to share these stories.
I write about, my next book's about motherhood, and I write about my postnatal depression in that, and it's a very honest book. So yeah, I'm hoping that will resonate with people.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I put everything in mine. I thought, why shouldn't I? I want the whole idea of the book. It isn't for me. It's for other people. There's like chapters upon everything, and and the messages I get.
That's the best, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like, thank you. I now understand, or I'm glad it's not just me, or I don't feel so, So we've got to keep up the good work, Kate. Now, Shape of a Boy, where can our listeners find this fabulous book, and where can they learn more about you, Kate?
Well, it's in all good book shops, Waterstones, and you can find it in Waterstones and on Amazon, of course. Yeah. And lots of lovely independent bookstores are stocking it as well. And sort of everywhere, I think.
Yeah, wonderful.
And you can follow me on Instagram at wickers.kate and on Twitter at Kate Wickers.
Fabulous. Well, on that note, Kate, I just want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute treat. And thank you to our listeners for listening to the Formidable Over 40 podcast. And Kate, thank you for joining us and sharing all of your wonderful stories. Head to the show notes to find out links to Kate's socials and writing, and follow the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please do share Formidable Over 40 with anyone who you think will enjoy it or needs it. And please do like and subscribe.